Ever found yourself wondering who takes those bitter cocoa beans and turns them into the smooth, rich chocolate we all crave?
It's actually a pretty fascinating process. And you can thank the skilled hands of liquor grinding mill operators for it all.
Yeah, exactly. And so today we're doing a deep dive into their world. We're using insights from RoleCatcher.com, which is a really cool website dedicated to helping people, maybe even you listening, navigate different career paths.
RoleCatcher is a great resource because they break down like all the ins and outs of different professions. And in this case, they're giving us this awesome look into the chocolate industry.
So let's talk chocolate. When you hear liquor grinding mill operator, what comes to mind?
I think most people probably imagine someone just like pushing buttons in a massive factory surrounded by rivers of chocolate.
Yeah.
And while the reality does involve some heavy-duty machinery, it's a lot more than that.
Okay, so what does a liquor grinding mill operator actually do?
All right, so picture this. You've got these roasted cocoa nibs, basically crushed up cocoa beans, and these are like the most important ingredient. So the liquor grinding mill operator is the one in charge of those huge mills that grind these nibs down into what's called chocolate liquor.
Okay.
It's really the heart of the entire chocolate making process, and these operators are the ones responsible for getting it just right.
When you say just right, what do you mean? What are they aiming for with this chocolate liquor?
So the end goal really is that smooth liquid chocolate we all know and love, but actually getting to that point requires a really impressive amount of precision. RoleCatcher really highlights this, explaining that operators use something called grinding stones inside these mills to carefully refine the nibs to a super specific consistency.
So it's not just about grinding everything as finely as possible. It's about getting a certain texture and flow.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act, right? Yeah. They control how the nibs are released into the mill. They're always keeping an eye on the temperature and constantly tweaking the settings to make sure the chocolate liquor comes out with the perfect viscosity and texture. It all depends what that chocolate liquor is going to be used for. It's kind of like being a chocolate chef, but instead of a whisk, you have this huge industrial mill at your disposal.
Now that sounds both kind of scary, but also incredibly cool. What's it actually like for someone working in this role on a daily basis? What's their work environment like?
So RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it. It's probably not for everyone. It can get hot, noisy, and you're on your feet a lot working with those big machines we talked about.
Hmm.
There's also the possibility of dealing with dust and other particles floating around depending on how the factory is set up. So it's definitely not your average cushy, air-conditioned office job.
Yeah, and definitely not for anyone sensitive to smells. But it sounds like you need a certain level of physical stamina to handle those conditions.
100%. But think about it. You get to be surrounded by the aroma of chocolate. Plus, there's a huge teamwork aspect. The guide emphasizes how these operators are constantly working together with other operators, supervisors, quality control teams, everyone. And they're all working towards the shared goal of making that perfect batch of chocolate.
Yeah, it seems like a demanding but rewarding environment for sure. There's that shared purpose and camaraderie that comes from creating something so many people love. I can see the appeal. What about the long-term prospects for someone in this role?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. So you might think, well, chocolate's always in demand, so job security, right? And you're not wrong. But RoleCatcher kind of digs deeper here, explaining that this isn't just a job, it's a potential career path with real opportunities for growth.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this career ladder. Where can a liquor grinding mill operator go from that initial position?
Yeah, so they outline a typical progression. Often you'd start at an entry-level position where you're learning the ropes, mostly assisting more experienced operators. But then, as you build your skills and your knowledge base grows, you could move up to becoming a full-fledged liquor grinding mill operator, taking on more responsibility, maybe even leading a team.
It's like that apprentice to master craftsman kind of thing.
You got it. And then at the top, you've got the lead liquor grinding mill operator.
Oh, wow.
This is someone with years of experience under their belt. They know these grinding mills like the back of their hand, can handle problems without breaking a sweat. They might even train the next generation of operators. Talk about pressure.
The Willy Wonka of their department.
Exactly.
So besides needing to know their way around a giant chocolate grinder, what other skills do you need to really nail this job? I'm guessing there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, you're absolutely right. RoleCatcher really emphasizes that those soft skills we always hear about, they're just as crucial as the technical stuff.
Like what, for example, what kind of soft skills are we talking about here?
Communication is huge. Remember, You're part of a team, often working in an environment that's super loud, so being able to communicate clearly and directly with your team is make or break. Whether it's sharing info, raising concerns, or just making sure everyone's on the same page, those communication skills are essential.
There's that quote, teamwork is the ability to work together toward a common vision, the ability to direct individual accomplishments toward organizational objectives. It is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results.
Couldn't put it better myself. And then you've got problem solving. These mills, they're complex pieces of machinery, and things are bound to go wrong at some point. Maybe the chocolate liquor isn't quite the right consistency, or maybe there's a mechanical hiccup. You need to be able to think on your feet, troubleshoot issues, and come up with solutions, and fast.
So you've got to be a bit of a chocolate detective on top of everything else. I bet those problem-solving skills are especially important when a batch of chocolate goes rogue.
Exactly. And this is where all these seemingly separate skills, the communication and the problem solving, they all come together. Let's say there's a sudden change in the consistency of the chocolate liquor.
Uh-oh. Sounds like a chocolate emergency.
Right. So a really skilled liquor grinding mill operator, they don't just start messing with settings randomly. They talk to their team, gather information. Was the last batch okay? Have there been any changes to the cocoa nibs recently? Has anyone else noticed something off?
So it's all about gathering information and collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By communicating effectively and getting all the facts, they can then use their problem-solving skills to zero in on what caused the issue and how to fix it. It's like a real-life puzzle, but with delicious stakes.
I love that. That's what I love about these deep dives. We're uncovering all these hidden complexities behind the things we usually take for granted. We've talked about the skills needed, the demands of the job, the potential career path. But RoleCatcher is also pretty upfront about the downsides too, right? It's not all chocolate waterfalls and everlasting gobstoppers.
True, true. While there's a lot to appreciate about the world of chocolate making, it's important to know the challenges too.
Okay, so give it to me straight. What are some of the not-so-sweet aspects that potential liquor grinding mill operators should be ready for?
Well, as we touched on before, the work environment can be really physically demanding. You're on your feet a lot, often in a hot environment, and it can get noisy. The guide also mentions the potential for being exposed to dust and other particles, which could be an issue for people with allergies or sensitivities. And then there's the possibility of shift work, which can really mess with your sleep schedule and personal life.
Yeah, it's not just about the work itself, it's about how it fits into your life as a whole. That's super important.
You're telling me. And while we're on the topic of lifestyle, let's not forget that amazing chocolate aroma. Yeah, that can get to be a bit much day in and day out. Kind of like when you go into a bakery. At first it's heavenly, but eventually you might not even smell it anymore.
It's true. You make a really good point about the smell. It's like anything else, too much of a good thing. But still, for people who are really passionate about chocolate and who have a high tolerance for delicious smells, this could be a super rewarding career path. What about the actual pay and benefits? Does RoleCatcher say anything about that?
Yeah, they do. And it looks like the chocolate industry knows how to take care of their liquor grinding mill operators. The guide mentions that the pay is usually pretty competitive, and there's definitely potential for overtime, which means more money in your pocket. Plus, you get that job security. As long as people are craving chocolate, those skills will always be needed.
That's good to hear. So just to recap, you've got decent pay, the possibility of overtime, a good level of job security, and on top of that, the satisfaction of working in an industry you're actually passionate about. Not bad for a day's work surrounded by chocolate. But before we finish up, I wanted to go back to something you brought up earlier about the industry's move towards sustainability and using ethically sourced cocoa. I'm curious, how does that impact a liquor grinding mill operator's job?
That's a great question, and it's a perfect example of how this deep dive can lead to even more exploration for everyone listening. RoleCatcher kind of mentions this whole evolving landscape in the industry, but doesn't go into a ton of detail. So what I find really interesting is this. How is this whole sustainability thing actually affecting the daily work of a liquor grinding mill operator?
Right, yeah, I get what you mean. So does that mean they need to learn new ways of processing these ethically sourced beans? Or maybe there are certain certifications they need to get?
Exactly. Those are the questions I'm hoping our listeners will take away with them and do some more digging into. It's possible that there's a growing need for liquor grinding mill operators who really understand sustainable chocolate production. Maybe some factories are even using brand new, environmentally friendly grinding equipment. Who knows?
Wow, it's like a whole other side to the job. It's not just about making tasty chocolate anymore. It's about making it in a responsible way, too.
Totally. And
Yeah.
for someone who's thinking about this as a career, understanding how these standards are changing and learning those specialized skills could give them a major advantage.
So, to all the aspiring liquor grinding mill operators out there, remember, it's not just about becoming a chocolate grinding pro. It's also about looking at the bigger picture, thinking about the ethical side of things, and being aware of how the whole industry is moving toward a more sustainable future.
Couldn't agree more.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into a world that I honestly knew very little about. It's amazing to think about just how much detail and skill goes into every piece of chocolate we eat.
I know, right? It really makes you appreciate that chocolate bar so much more.
It really does. A huge thank you to you, our expert, for sharing all of your knowledge and insights with us today. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has satisfied your craving for knowledge about the world of chocolate. Until next time, happy exploring